If you are someone who just can't unlock your speech no matter what, for some reason, even when you have a clear idea of what you want to say in your native language, but can't transfer it to English, or maybe you can, but when it's time to speak, you freeze up, go blank, and get nervous. This video is a tutorial, a step-by-step guide. This video specifically applies to you. First detail, this video doesn't just apply to English. It applies to languages in general, in Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, any spoken language. As long as it's not sign languages or things like that, one of the principles even applies to them too, regardless of the language. The first thing you need to understand, my friend, is this image that's showing on your screen right now. This is what I show my students, and I affectionately call it the fluency triangle. What does that mean? Any spoken language, as I said, will have these three elements. First, the sounds of the language. Second, the writing of the language. And third, the meanings in the language. When you can connect these three elements and use them, you become fluent. That's why I call it the fluency triangle. Example, people who can understand the language when reading, but can't understand when listening. That might be your case right now. You have the connection between writing and meanings, but not with the sounds. Maybe someone who has spent a lot of time listening to native speakers, for some reason, grew up in the United States, or whatever, or even with languages that have a different alphabet, like Russian or Japanese. You've spent a lot of time listening, so you can understand through contexts you've seen in movies, series, manga. Great. But when you need to read the alphabet, you can't understand the Japanese syllabary or the Cyrillic script in Russian. In other words, you've connected the sounds with the meanings, but not with the writing. So, what's the point? To achieve total fluency, you need this connection between sounds, writing, and meanings. What will create this connection? Maximum immersion, maximum exposure to the language, whatever it may be, in all possible ways. For example, by watching this video. So take advantage and subscribe to the channel now. Why do I specifically emphasize in all possible ways? Because if you want to connect sounds with meanings and, at the same time, with writing, you need to understand the following. You'll have to listen to many sounds, of course, and read a lot. Reading here isn't limited to books or articles. It can be messages, memes, anything. Each of these three elements will have a specific path for you to follow and get used to. To find the meanings, you'll need to consult your language. There's no way around it. The database, let's say, the dictionary installed in your head at this very moment, is in Spanish because you were born in Argentina and spent decades receiving that language. For example, input is a compound word in English that means to put in. So, input is the stimulus you receive from sound, writing, and consumption. Everything you consume is input. The opposite, output, means to put out, that is, to produce, write, or speak. If you want to perform well in the area of output, you need these 3 points very well connected, so you don't freeze up when producing. To connect these 3, the first step is maximum immersion. When we talk about maximum immersion, we're talking about watching series and listening as much as possible. Podcasts, radio, music, whatever auditory stimulus you can get in the language. And notice that at no point did I say you need to arrange an exchange program. It's not necessary to travel to learn. I have many students who have lived abroad for years and don't speak the local language. When I talk about immersion, I mean using the language as much as possible in your daily life, without having to leave your neighborhood, using the internet. The point is that you need to enjoy the content you consume to properly immerse yourself. Try many things, YouTube channels, radio stations, books, until you find what you like most. The important thing is that the immersion has a positive emotional charge, as this helps the brain judge the information as relevant. So, to connect sounds and writing to meanings, you will need to consult translations. At the beginning, there's no problem with that, contrary to what many say. Consulting is different from consuming translations all the time. It's necessary to consult to create in the language and understand what you don't know yet. This is how you start expanding your vocabulary and connectivity in the language. So, let me take a look here. You'll see in the translator, in ChatGapt, in Google Images, depending on the situation, it's solved. You go through this process of, I don't know, let me check, several times a day and every day. My mantra, every day and several times a day. Okay, it will start to strengthen this triangle more and more, because you'll be connecting sounds, writing, and meanings more and more. Of course, when we talk about slang, very specific expressions, things that don't even have a translation. Just like every language has things that can't be translated into English. But the point is, even those things, you'll catch and store in your brain the meaning and usage, just like a native does as you see them. So, immersion is fundamental. But here's the point, and this is where many people make mistakes. People don't understand that to make this connection of the fluency triangle, as I call it, these three main things that are essential for any language. For unblocked speech, you need to train three things. An unblocked speech, a native-like speech. It has a perfect balance between stimulus and response. Stimulus and response have something in between that is missing for you. Okay, first, what is stimulus and response? Stimulus is the following. Remember I talked about input and output? Great. If I come to you now and say, brother, excuse me, sorry to bother you. What time is it? Dude, you've received this question 50,000 times in your life, since you were little. For you to look at your watch and say, oh, 7 p.m., you don't have to think, wait a minute, how do I say 7? Is it 10 and 7, or just together? You don't need to go through that because you've heard, read, and attributed the meaning to it 500,000 times in your life. Because in the country where you were born, you kept hearing this and had to say it countless times. You didn't have to do the same thing, the same number of times with English, or Russian, or Italian, or whatever language. So, if I come to you now and say, excuse me, what time is it? Like a native, please, excuse me, what time is it? Like that. I'm absolutely sure there will be a percentage of people watching this video who will understand this without any problem, without me putting subtitles here, right? There will be people who already understood before, some who only understood after reading, and some who didn't understand at all. These are the three stages. Those who understood just from the sounds have a strong connection between sound, writing, and meaning. Great. Those who only understood after the subtitles appeared need the writing. Got it? So, the connection between sound and meaning isn't as strong. When the writing came in, then yes, because they've read much more than they've heard. Great. And there are others who still didn't understand because they don't have a strong connection between sound and writing with meanings. This is normal. It comes with practice and persistence. Great. But the point is, this is a stimulus. When I come to you and say, excuse me, what time is it? That's a stimulus. And then you'll look and say, oh, 7 p.m., that's the response. But remember, I said there's something in between, which is precisely what distinguishes native speech from yours, which is still blocked. What is this thing called? Reaction time. So, when I say to you, excuse me, what time is it? Until you turn to your watch and think, man, how do I say 7 p.m. in English again? You see, why doesn't an American, a Canadian, or a native English speaker have this block and think, gee, wait, do I have to say p.m.? Or is it 7 p.m.? I don't remember. Oh my God, why doesn't he have this problem? Like you with Portuguese, he's had to say this 500,000 times. Man, you're not just that. In other words, when he receives any stimulus in the language, most possible linguistic stimuli, right? From hearing, receiving a question, reading something, someone giving an opinion, having to respond, someone asking for his opinion, and having to give it, whatever it is. When he receives the stimulus, his reaction time to generate the response and produce it verbally is very low. Why is it so low? Because he's already had to go through this exercise. Let's say, how many times? Man, you can't even count. Compare it to you in your language, in Portuguese, the exact same thing. Now compare yourself with the language you want to learn: Spanish, Italian, Mandarin, whatever. Man, if you don't keep forcing yourself, in quotes, like crazy, creating sentences, trying to speak, and then you don't know, you look it up, etc. If you don't make this part of your life, your speech doesn't unblock. Man, this is the point that many people confuse. To improve your speech, you need to speak, not necessarily have conversations. Many people misunderstand this, thinking that to speak, to have unblocked speech, you need to have conversations with a lot of people. That's why people still mistakenly think they need to do an exchange program. So they'll have to talk to people, no excuses. No, man. We're talking about sound reproduction. Look at the term, sound reproduction. That is, repeating something you've already seen. From where? From the immersion I mentioned at the beginning. Are you doing immersion? You'll start reproducing sound patterns you've picked up from movies, series, music, books, podcasts, radio. Exactly like you did in Portuguese. Man, when you were little, you listened to the radio. You got into a taxi, and the radio was playing. There was music. You liked the music, went online to get the lyrics. You found them, thought it was cool. What do you think the American at that age was doing? When he got into a taxi, he was also listening to the radio, only it was American. He liked the music, went to a site like Lyrics, for example, found a site, entered, and learned to sing the song in his language. He liked it. And then, man, as a child, he learned new words, picking up other meanings he wasn't used to yet. Do you get my point? Man, if you want to unblock your speech, you don't need to converse. You need to speak. And what is speaking? Production, or better, sound reproduction. Reproduction, because you're repeating sounds you've already picked up from prior immersion, right? From previous contact, having heard it many times before, and attributing those sounds to the meanings you'll find through writing. Because sometimes you'll hear a sound and won't understand. Then you'll see how it's written. Take that writing, and consult a dictionary, the internet, ChatGPT. So, you need the writing, got it? With the sound, you'll only understand if someone, a teacher, a native speaker, explains it to you. And a native who also understands your language, right? Great. Now, when you have access to the writing, you can copy, paste it into Google Translate, ChatGPT, look it up in the dictionary. Then you get it. So, it's always this triangle, man. But this triangle will get stronger and better, and you'll become more fluent in terms of having fluid speech. The more stimuli you get, the more need you have to create responses, which is just speaking, not even conversing. Conversing, of course, will help. But why does conversation help? Because you have to speak. Man, at the end of the day, it's speech, it's sound reproduction. But the more you need that speech, that sound reproduction, the faster your reaction time will be. That's it. When you try to speak something and hit that block. Why? Because you haven't had to create that thing so many times. You haven't had to reproduce that sound sequence so many times, whether it's a sentence, a slang, an expression, or a single word. You get it? That's the point. So, if you want to unblock your speech, speak a lot and always look for something called error feedback. What is that? You'll try to speak, create your sentence. Then you'll check. Okay, fine, but is this right? How can I check this? Go to ChatGPT, create the sentence, whatever it may be, type it in, and say, "Chat, correct me if I'm wrong, explain why it's wrong, and show me alternatives." You don't need to pay for the ChatGPT plan. The free plan gives you this as many times as you want. Keep doing that, my mantra, every day, several times a day. This will start building that confidence. But there's a catch. Well, but I can't train my pronunciation, right? Because I'll just have the logic of writing and meaning. But what about the sound? You said I won't hear it there. Here's the thing, man. You go to a site or an app called English. What will it do as you use it? It'll take a word or a short phrase, not a paragraph, a word or short phrase, and look for it in the languages listed there, including the accent you can choose. It will grab this and guide you to a bunch of examples of natives using that word or short phrase from YouTube, which is why it's called Youglish. It consults YouTube videos of natives using it in context. It leaves the subtitles at the bottom, both on the computer and on the phone, and even gives you the option to translate that specific phrase. Man, what's happening? You're training those three: sound, writing, and meaning with the phrase you need and want to use. The best thing for reprogramming your speech is error feedback. You'll see it and say, "Here, I wasn't pronouncing it like that," and the natives, "I've seen 10 videos here, and everyone's saying it like this, so I need to fix it." Done. Want to unblock your speech? There's your tutorial. You don't have any more excuses. Got any questions? Leave them in the comments. If you're new here, welcome. I'm here, of course, to share as much content as possible about languages. Consider subscribing to the channel to learn how to speak English faster.